Today we're going to learn how to build a brick pier or a brick column. The terms are interchangeable, but in general, a pier is going to be short and fat, while a column is going to be tall and skinny. I'm going to show you the step-by-step process, but I'm also going to include exactly what I'm thinking about as I'm building the pier. Here's our setup for our brick pier. We have enough brick to build the pier, plus a few extra, a pan full of good mortar. I've got my levels in a block cell over there. I also have a hoe and a bucket of water behind the pan in case I need to shake up the mortar, and my tool bag. These are the tools we're going to be using to build the pier. Now this framing square and pencil are used at the very beginning. This brush, striking iron, used at the very end. This short level, this could be a 16-inch level, a 2-foot level, whatever, is going to be used towards the beginning. For the most part, we're going to be using these three tools to build most of the pier. A trowel, a modular ruler, and a 4-foot level. We're going to be using our framing square and pencil to lay out our pier. The size of this pier is going to be 16 inches by 20 inches. Now that's what's called a nominal measurement. That's not the actual measurement of the pier. In construction, we have what are called nominal measurements and actual measurements. A good example of this is going to be a carpenter's 2x4. 2x4 representing the nominal measurement, 2 inches by 4 inches. But that's not what actually a 2x4 is. A 2x4 is actually 1.5 inches by 3.5 inches. Those are known as actual measurements. The nominal measurement is going to be 2 inches by 4 inches. 2x4 for short. This pier is going to be 16 inches by 20 inches, nominally. But we're going to let the brick, the actual size of the brick, determine what our pier size is going to be. We're going to start off simply by tracing our framing square on the ground a comfortable distance away from our mortar pan and our stock. Once we trace the one edge of our framing square, we're going to turn it around, line it back up with the lines we just made, and we're going to extend the short line. Doesn't matter how far we extend it, just bring it out to the length of the framing square. Now I'm going to grab a few brick and start laying them out dry along our layout lines. One brick right in the corner. Another brick right here, and what we're going to do is eyeball the width of our head joint. That looks like a decent head joint right there. This will be our 16-inch side of the pier, although that's not going to be the actual measurement, and we'll get to that in just a moment. Now I'm going to lay out the 20-inch side of our pier. Doing the same thing, this is what's called dry bonding. We're not laying the brick in any mortar yet. All we're doing is establishing the spacing of our brick. Here's an outside corner, here's an outside corner, and here's an outside corner. I'm going to mark exactly where these corners are. And I'm going to mark where our head joints are laid out to. Typically, a pro isn't going to do this. As an apprentice, you're working on your eyesight. Now we'll take these brick away. We have our corners established. 1, 2, 3. We need our 4th corner established. We're going to go back to the framing square, line it up right here with our original line and with our corner. We'll trace our framing square. Then we're going to take our framing square and go to our other corner. Line it up with our original line here and with our corner. Here's the outside of our pier. 1, 2, 3, 4 corners. This is the layout for a 16 by 20 pier, though those aren't the actual measurements. Well, let's see what the actual measurements are. The actual measurement of this pier is going to be 15 5/8 by about 19 5/8. Those measurements are modular measurements. We're using modular brick. We're going to be using our modular ruler for spacing out bed joints. Well, now, what's a modular measurement? I was just talking about exact measurements and nominal measurements. Now I use the term modular measurement. A modular measurement is an increment of 4 inches. In the US, modular construction is based on the increment of 4 inches. Block, concrete block, are nominally 16 inches in length. That's also a modular measurement. It's an increment of 4 inches. They're nominally 8 inches in height. 8 inches is an increment of 4 inches. Carpenters and iron workers and even electricians use modular measurements in construction, meaning a carpenter's doors are going to be increments of 4 inches in width and in height. That's going to work out to the mason's measurements of increments of 4 inches. A door frame isn't going to be 31 inches wide. That's not a modular measurement. 32, 36, 40 inches wide, those are modular measurements. Height-wise, we're going to be going with 72 inches, 76, 80 inches. Those are modular measurements for doors. Windows, the same thing. They're going to be modular measurements. Electricians' electrical boxes are usually going to be 4 inches tall. Some electrical boxes are squares, 4 by 4. Those are modular measurements. That helps in construction, keeping everything to one system. Even carpenter spacing on their studs, their framing, they're usually spaced at 16 inches apart. Every few studs, we hit an increment of 4 feet. 4 feet works for drywall and what's called OSB board, oriented strand board. Modular measurements are used in construction in the US, and it's based on the increment of 4 inches. Now we're going to start the building process. I'm going to spread for the entire course. I'm going to try not to bury the pencil line that we drew on the ground. I'm going to try to stay just inside that pencil line. I'm trying to be very neat and accurate with this spreading. I'm going to furrow the mortar. That's going to help me level it out and when I place the brick down, it's going to help the brick sit level. First brick is going to go right in this corner. I'm going to use this corner the entire time as the corner in which I check height from. This is going to be the first brick that I lay in each course. It's always going to be this brick, this corner brick. For this course, it's going this way. The next course, it's going to be going the other way, perpendicular. Trying to be real neat with the mortar, keeping the floor clean. I can still see the pencil line that we drew initially. I'll put some mortar on the end of that brick. I'm going to put mortar on this brick. This is called double buttering. We get a nice full head joint when we double butter units, whether they're brick or block. You know, keeping the area nice and neat. Making sure I can still see the pencil line. I'm trying to lay these brick as accurately as possible with my eyes. Trying to get them level just using my eyes. I'm going to go to this side of the pier, making sure I can still see the chalk line, or the pencil line, sorry. Going to take this brick right out to the corner of our layout lines. I'm going to start on the back of the pier. You're just starting out. Feel free to walk around to the back of the pier. Make sure we have a nice full bed joint at the bottom, nice full head joints between our brick. Trying to keep the floor clean. Reusing that mortar. Don't want to be making a mess. Our last brick is our closure brick. I'm going to double butter, putting mortar on the brick that we laid, and mortar on both ends of the brick that I'm laying. There's our layout course. I'm going to take my time with this course. This is our first course. I want to get this to the proper size. I'm going to get everything nice and level. And I'm going to show you up close on what we do when it comes to plumbing the brick. This was the first brick that I laid. I'm going to start in this corner. Whatever way this brick is going, that's the first way that I'm going to level. This brick is going that way. I'm going to level this part of the pier first. This side is now level. Now I'm going to spin the level. I'm still going to go off of this corner. I'm going to get this side of the pier reading level. I'm not trying to crush these bricks. I'm trying to be real deliberate and barely tapping these bricks down, getting them nice and level and flat on the top. This part's level and this part's level, and it's all level to this corner brick. Now I'm going to do the two other parts. Back of the pier's level. Now we'll get this side nice and level. Good. Top of our layout course is nice and level. I want to check our measurements using our ruler. Remember we were going for 15 5/8 by 19 5/8. Because I stuck with the pencil line that we originally drew, our measurements are looking good. This one moved slightly. And this one moved slightly. I'm going to take out the framing square. I'm going to make sure all four sides are nice and square. This is the last time we're going to be using the framing square. That looks excellent. Side looks good. Excellent. Everything's nice and square. Our measurements are good. Now we can put the framing square away. I'm going to get a close-up on the next step. Here I'm checking the very first brick we laid for plumb. Don't go crazy with the very first course of brick trying to plumb every individual brick, getting them perfectly plumb. We can make this level read pretty much anything we want to, and it's going to look good up against the brick. Right now it's slack to the line, and that looks good against the brick. Here we're perfectly plumb. Here we're hard to the line, and that looks good against the brick. Don't drive yourself crazy trying to get every brick on the first course perfectly plumb. Get them close. We're also going to check height on the very first course using our modular ruler. These should be laid to the modular 6 on the back of the ruler. Looks like our height is just fine. I'm going to check height after I lay each course, not during the course. We lay the entire course, then check height. That's going to help us adjust our spreading on the course that we're going to be laying next. Now we're going to move on to our second course. I know that the height of our first course was right on, so I'm going to try to spread an even amount of mortar. Not too tall, not too skinny. Again, trying to be very deliberate with the mortar. When we get to the corners, putting a little bit on the corner in the style of, we'll say, face shell bedding, almost like we're spreading block. That's going to help fill in these corners after we lay the brick, making our corners nice and solid. This pier is going to be 21 courses tall. That is, in a modular measurement, that's 56 inches, 4 foot, 8 inches. Same thing. We have 21 courses. That means we have 80 of these corners. This very first corner not counting. We have 80 corners of bed joint that we're going to need to strike up. We want those corners filled solid. This is the corner that we start each course with. This brick. going to work my way around this way on this course. Trying to keep everything nice and clean. As I'm laying the brick, I'm looking at the face of the brick, the bottom of the brick, and its relation to the course below. And I'm trying to get these brick as close to plumb and level as I can, just using my eyes. You might see me tapping down the brick. Not only am I tapping down the brick, I'm also putting pressure on the brick with my other hand. You're going to hear a lot of scraping, trying to keep the area nice and clean. You'll see most of the brick that I lay are going to be double buttered. Even when applying head joints to the brick, I'm not going to apply a giant amount of mortar to the head joints on the brick. What's going to happen as we lay the brick around the pier, if we apply a lot of mortar to the head joint, all we're going to do is push the brick that we just laid. Before I break out the level and check the top of the course for level, I use my eyes and try to get all the brick even before we take the level out. This was the first brick that we laid on this course. This is our corner that we're going to start everything with. This brick is going this way. I'm going to level this way. Good. Turn it this way. Good. You're working on your eyes a whole lot when you're building a brick pier. Secret is, if you can build a brick pier, you can build anything in masonry. Before I start checking for plumb, I'm going to clean the face of the brick off. So I'm now putting the level right on top of wet mortar. I'm going to go back to our starting corner. This is where we want to start getting everything nice and plumb. And I'm going to show you a close-up in just a moment of how we get the brick nice and plumb. We're going to do one side of the pier at a time. You'll see that I plumb up two corners, then straight edge, that side of the pier. Tapping my trowel on the ground, keeping my trowel clean, so that when I scrape mortar away from the face of the brick, I'm not smearing it. Good. Two of our sides are now plumb. We'll go to the third side. And the last side. Right now I'm using the 16-inch level. Probably just going to use this level or 1 or 2 more courses, then switch over to the 4-foot level for everything. And I won't use this level anymore for the rest of the pier. I want to get a real close-up picture of exactly what's going on in the very first corner. We get this corner reading plumb. Sure, the bubble is in between the lines, but here's the trick. Not only do we want the bubble in between the lines, ideally, the bubble is going to be perfectly center of those lines. But here's the trick. If anything, that bubble is closer to that line over here, to this line. Meaning that this jam, this corner, is leaning in to the pier. And we're talking by a hair. And when I say a hair, I mean a hair. Maybe the thickness of the actual line that's drawn on the vial. This isn't perfectly plumb. If anything, it's leaning that way into the pier. The trick is to get all 4 corners doing just that. Well, isn't that going to make the pier out of plumb? The pier is going to slowly get more narrow and narrow as it goes up. You would think that. You would think that. Here's the thing. These brick, even though they're laid, when we lay the next course, these brick are still going to move slightly, barely, just that hair. And if anything, they're going to want to move out. As the pier goes up, this is going to start reading plumb, perfectly plumb. If we build each course perfectly plumb with that bubble right in between the lines in the center, as the pier goes up, it's going to tend to get wider. And now we're fighting the pier. We're trying to get the pier back to the original dimension that we laid it out at. And it's a struggle. Making each jam slightly out of plumb, we're going to say what's called slack to the line, is going to help you in this process. Now we've leveled, plumbed, and straight edged each brick. I want to check our height. We're good. We're still right on. I'm probably not going to take this ruler out for another couple courses. I'm going to spread, again, pretty much like I just did before. Same amount of mortar. What I'm noticing right now is I'm noticing a very light puddle at the bottom of our pier. Puddle of water. Looks a little wet at the bottom of this pier. That's telling me that these brick aren't absorbing much moisture. These are what bricklayers will call a hard brick. Well, every brick is hard, isn't it? I don't want to get hit by a brick. They're pretty hard. These brick have been cooked or have spent extra time in the kiln, and they become very hard and sort of brittle, almost glass-like. And they don't absorb the moisture out of the mortar. Well, that's going to help us in some ways and is going to hurt us in some ways. It's going to help us. And if you look close, you can even see bubbles coming out of the bottom of this pier. How's it going to help us? It's going to help us by allowing us to go a longer amount of time before we need to strike this pier up, before we need to use our striking iron. This mortar is going to stay soft for a long time. That's one way it's going to help us. How's it going to hurt us? Well, as this pier goes up, we might start seeing water run down the face of the pier. Water coming out of the mortar and running down the faces of the pier, making our work not look aesthetically pleasing. Every single brick that I'm laying, I'm trying to be very deliberate, trying to get the bottoms of the brick lining up with the tops of the brick below, and the tops of the brick nice and flat. I can look down these corners and see if the brick that I just laid are plumb or close to plumb. I know that the first two courses are right on. I'm going to be able to see if this corner is overhanging this way or that way. And I can do that on each corner before we even grab the level. Before we even pick up the level, we're going to get these brick as close to plumb and level as possible. I'm going to use the short level again for this course. Starting with our first brick, we're nice and level that way. Nice and level that way. We're level on the back, and we're level on the side. Now I'm going to run the level around the pier, checking plumb. Again, we want it, I'm going to say, a hair slack to the line. One side at a time. I check for plumb, then straight edge that side. Check for plumb, straight edge. Last side. Straight edge. That's the last time I'm going to use this short level on this pier. I like to get to the 4-foot level as soon as possible when building piers and columns. Usually in the first 2 or 3 courses or 4 courses, a 4-foot level is a little too big, a little too awkward or cumbersome to try to plumb up the brick. It's a little too heavy. Once we get a few courses established, I like to get to the 4-foot level. I'm not going to check height. We just checked height the 2 previous courses. It was right on. I'm going to go right to the next course. Trying to spread a decent amount. When I furrow, trying to make the top nice and even. It's a little empty spot on that corner. The reason why I'm talking so much is because a lot of times, at least when I watch how-to videos, I can watch somebody building something or fixing something, but I don't know what they're thinking about. What are they thinking of? That's what's really going to help me to be able to do it for myself. I don't just want to copy what somebody else is doing. I want to know what they're thinking so I can think for myself. What I'm thinking right now is all of these corners are nice and full. I have a nice even bed of mortar spread around. I'm going to start laying. Here's our first brick again. Trying to put even pressure. Use that mortar. Put a little bit of a head joint on there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to work my way right around this pier. As I'm laying this corner, I'm looking down the corner of the brick to the previous courses. I want to be sticking out this way or sticking out that way. I want to get it as close to plumb as possible. Same thing here, I'm looking at this corner. Not trying to go super fast. Every brick that we lay is important. A little empty spot right there. I'm going to furrow that mortar to the face so that we don't have a void when it comes time to strike up. I'm looking at this small chip right here. Typically you don't want to lay chipped brick at the corner. That chip is very small. I'm going to leave it. I don't think it's going to be an issue. It's more on the top of the brick than on the face. Here we lay our closure brick as the last one. Everything looks nice and even. I'm going to take the mortar away from the top so that when I lay my level down on top, I'm not getting mortar on my level. Try to keep your tools clean, especially your level. If I get mortar on the level, everywhere I move the level, I'm going to transfer mortar. We're eventually going to be plumbing the face of the brick. If I have mortar on my level, then I'm going to get mortar on the face of the brick. And we're trying to keep stuff nice and clean. Top is nice and level. Now I'm going to go around it, checking plumb, all with the 4-foot level. 1 side of the pier at a time. Straight edge. Clearing mortar off the face. Again, I don't want to put my level right into wet mortar. You take your time in the first few courses. The first 3 courses like we did, it's going to make the rest of the building time very easy. You're not going to struggle. Not going to struggle with trying to keep the units plumb. We have 4 courses done. I am going to check height. Now, again, we want to be at the modular 6. What does the modular 6 mean? The modular 6 means we have 6 courses of brick in 16 inches. That's all the modular 6 means. If anything, right now, we are a touch high. Maybe a 16th, if that. 16th high. I want to keep spreading like normal. Right now, we're about halfway done the pier, a little more than halfway done the pier. We're at 14 courses. We're going a total of 21 courses. I'm out of mortar, so I'm going to need to get some more mortar. But I wanted to show you the moisture that's coming out of the face of the wall. That's the moisture from the mortar not being absorbed into the brickwork. It runs down the face of the wall. Not necessarily a problem. We're going to use it to our advantage and not strike up any of our work as we're going. We're going to wait till the end before we strike up any of our work. And even at that time, the mortar might still be a little too wet to strike up. We've got 2 courses left. Before I run those 2 courses in, I'm going to check height. If there's any corrections that need to be made in the last 2 courses, getting up or getting down, I'll be able to compensate there. Our height's good. We're just going to continue on these last 2 courses. Here we can take a look at how we did with plumbing. Even though the first few courses I laid slack to the line, once we get up towards the top, now the pier is perfectly plumb. Now we're done building the pier. All of our jambs are plumb, all of our courses are level and at the correct height. But a pier doesn't just stop with an open top like this. It's usually covered by something. Covered by either a cast stone or a piece of flagstone, or we're meeting the underside of something like a porch or a floor. A pier isn't just left open like this. Before we strike up or tool our work, we're going to make sure our top course is square by running a framing square around all four corners. If this pier is being covered by a cast stone, that cast stone is going to be made perfectly square. In this case, it's going to be a perfect rectangle. We want the overhang of that cast stone to be even all the way around the top of the pier. Now we're going to tool or strike up our work. I'm just going to use a concave striking iron. You can use a sled runner if you want to. I use a sled runner on brickwork. Usually on long walls, I'll use the sled runner for the bed joints. In this case, I'm just going to use a striking iron for the entire pier. This is going to be a close-up of how we strike up the corners of the pier. We have 80 of these corners in this pier. It's important that they're all full and that they look nice. We strike away from the corner. We need a little bit of mortar. We'll put it on our striking iron and we go away from the corner. What I mean is we don't go towards the corner. If we go towards the corner, we're going to chunk some of the mortar out. We want these corners nice and full. They should be concave when you look at them from this angle and when you look at them from this angle. They should be concave both ways. Every single corner, no holes, and filled completely. This is what the profile of the joint should look like at each corner. The joint is concave when we look down this side. It's also concave when we look down this side. The joint is completely full from brick to brick. Concave both ways. Now we're going to use our brush and brush the face of the wall. That's going to help us with two things. Number one, it's going to fill in small holes that we have in our mortar joints. Number two, it's going to remove all of that excess mortar that's sticking out past the face. This mortar is still a little on the wet side. There's a trick that I'm going to show you of how to brush the wall when the mortar is still pretty wet. When brushing the wall, we don't want to smear the face of the wall with mortar. And you would think that if the mortar is wet, we would want to brush the wall slow. We're going to do the exact opposite. When we brush the wall slow, we start smearing the face of the wall with the mortar. If we go slow. If we go fast, that's going to knock the excess mortar off the face and fill in our holes without smearing the wall. Now we use our striking iron and lightly go back over the joints. This is what's called polishing the mortar joints. This gets a nice shine on the joint. It also helps seal the joint from brick to brick. Those are the steps in building a brick pier. Now I know most of it was sped up. That's because most of it is just repetition. But in the early courses, I wanted you to know what I was thinking and how the first few courses determine how the rest of the pier turns out. What we didn't talk about was speed. This took me roughly 2 hours to build. It was about 5 minutes per course to build. But don't get too caught up with speed. There is one more lesson I'd like to show you in reference to speed. A lesson in regard to speed in bricklaying. I want you to take a look at this arch above the window there. Looks good. Now take a look at this arch above the window. That looks pretty good too. Well, what's the difference between this arch and this arch? This building's been here over 100 years. Let me tell you, the guy that built this arch probably did it maybe 5 minutes faster than the guy that built this arch. Take a close look right above that video camera that's on the right. You'll see two soldiers, same size, right next to each other, stack bond in the middle of the arch. Yeah, but this guy did it 5 minutes faster. So what? This has been here over 100 years, and I walk by this every day. Thanks for watching how to build a brick pier. If you can build a brick pier, keep things plumb, level, on the correct height, and square, you have the ability to build just about anything in masonry. Thanks again for watching.